What is up, guys? My name is Harry Rice. Welcome back to the channel. Today, as you can tell, is a brand new video, and today we're kind of following up from the last video where I did the line predictions. Go check that out. I totally don't accidentally call Ivan Demidov Matvey. Totally don't do that. Today, however, we're going to be doing the points predictions. I thought this would be a very fun idea. I kind of took inspiration from Talking Halves, my boy Rick over there. Check that video out that he did. I don't know if it's posted yet. I'm assuming it is. I will preface this by saying a few things. Number one, I won't be ranking absolutely everybody, just the guys who are mostly projected to make the lineup right out of camp. I'll be doing a couple of guys like Struble and Mayu together. I'll be doing a couple other guys in there, like Justin Barron, who's probably going to get into a couple games, I would think. I'll rank a couple guys like that. So don't expect to see Owen Beck, Philip Mazar, Sean Farrell. Don't expect to see like guys like that get in my rankings, because who could have predicted Owen Beck playing one game last year? You know, it's something where, yeah, they'll more than likely get a couple games at the end of the year, depending on if we're in or out of the playoffs, I would think. Especially if we're in, because they probably want to rest guys like Coffield, Slafkovsky, guys like that. So they probably will get in lineup at that point. But aside from just saying they might get games, I couldn't really tell you if Mazar is going to, in 5 games, get no points or end up getting 4 points. You know, I couldn't tell you anything like that. I did mostly go off of sort of patterns. For example, with Nick Suzuki, the captain, he's very much had an upward trajectory over the last, since his career started, really. So I kind of, you know, put my rankings as such. I'm not going to give him 64 points. That would be stupid regardless, but I'm not going to do that, you know. And secondly, or thirdly, I guess, these are simply my rankings. These are, I don't know any more than the average fan or the average insider. I wouldn't be able to tell you how good the team's going to do. I can merely only tell you how well I think they're going to do. Now, with that being said, would I love for Suzuki to have a 113-point season and Coffield to have 70 goals? Yes, of course. Am I going to predict that? No, because that's just unrealistic. I'm going to predict what I realistically think the team probably achieves, at what level they generally achieve to, so yeah, and I also will say I think some of the numbers that I put are a little bit adjusted, considering the team has a little more depth now. You know, last year it wasn't, especially with guys getting hurt, like Dach and Newhook, it wasn't just the Habs are a one-line team. We have 2, and you could maybe even argue 3 scoring lines. So I think that the top line is going to get a little bit more points than they did the year before, but we'll get into that when we talk about them. So yeah, without further ado, without any more time wasting, any more dilly-dallying, I've already spent like 2 minutes talking away. We're going to get right into the predictions. I'm not really going to say too much about the players. More so just giving my general thoughts on their point totals. Of course, I'm going to go goals, assists, points. There's a couple players I'm going to go with penalty minutes, because come on, Arbor Jackeye, you gotta predict the penalty minutes. There's no fun if you're not predicting the penalty minutes with Arbor Jackeye and Michael Pizzetta. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Of course, and now I'll say real quick, I'm doing this from the guy who leads the team with the most points to the least amount of points, and I'll predict the goaltenders at the end as well, Montembeault and Primo, because clearly I can be right about those and not totally be wrong. Alright, leading the team, and I think this one's going to be right. I think everybody's going to be predicting this guy to lead the team unanimously across the board, and that's obviously Slafkovsky. No, obviously Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki is going to lead the team, I think, with 82 games, of course, 38 goals, 54 assists for 92 points. Now, of course, if you look at his points trajectory, it might be like, here, he's on pace for like point per game. He's not on pace for like 90 points. The NHL is kind of leaning towards more offense. A little bit of the trap style, but a very modified trap with a lot of heavy offense. Suzuki's a two-way guy, but with the fact that we do have a very good second line, which of course we'll get into, a very good blue line, and a pretty good third line, or a pretty decent third line, I think you could say at the very least. I think Suzuki's offensive numbers could very likely go up, especially if Coffield is back to full health and Slafkovsky is the beast that we saw during the second half of the year last year. Suzuki's points could be as high as 90. I think even point per game I think we'd be extremely happy with, because he's about to enter his prime and he's a point per game player. You could expect 90 to 100 points when he really caps off at 27, 28. I think you could very well expect that out of Nick Suzuki, but I think he's going to lead the team. He's going to take that next step, and he's going to be quite good. Second on the team, and second and third, you can swap these guys if you really want. However, I do believe that Cole Coffield is finally going to have that massive breakout that's been expected of him. He had a very hot January and April last season. And April notoriously, teams are playing playoff hockey. So the fact that Coffield had, I think it was 6 goals in 8 games, something like that, pretty good. I think he is going to play all 82 games as he did last year. 44 goals, 42 assists for 86 points. Now, yes, the goals might be a bit high. A guy whose career high is 28 but scored 26 in 40-something games. Remember that? He would have scored 42 years ago. And if he didn't have a bum shoulder, would have scored 40 last year probably. I think it's fair to assume you could get 44 goals out of Cole Coffield this year, This is a kid he's 23, I think. He just turned 22 or 23 years old. This is a guy who he's got a fantastic shot. Even his playmaking, I think the 42 assists is incredibly can be very, very much expected out of Cole Coffield, because you look at the way that even when he wasn't scoring last year, he was setting up the puck. He was a very good playmaker when his shoulder was still bum in the early months of the season. So him getting 86 points, especially again with the amount of depth we have on the team now, teams aren't going to be just locked on Cole Coffield like they were for vast parts of the season last year. They're going to have to worry about guys like Slafkovsky and even Suzuki and Dach and Laine. They're going to have to worry about a lot of these guys. So that could leave Coffield as a guy who could be left open a lot more and could end up scoring, like I said, that 44 goals. I still think Coffield has potential for 50. I think he hits 44 this year. Call me a homer all you want, but that's what I think. All right. Number 3rd on the team, of course, capping off the top line is Juraj Slafkovsky. I think he's going to finish the year with, as well, 82 games played. I originally had 80 games, but it's like, is he really going to miss a game or two to an injury? I don't think he's going to get suspended, but I think he does get all 82 games in there. He's going to get 33 goals, 46 assists for 79 points, so he takes that massive next step. You could say, I think, a breakout year. He had only 40 points last year, but that's what guys are getting. This was getting, 30 of those points in the last, 40 games of the year, something like that. I think 79 points, if Slafkovsky comes into camp and comes into the season the way he played in that second half of last season, you could definitely expect this point totals for him. 33 goals, I think, is extremely doable. He put up, I think, 20 last year. He put up 20 goals or near 20 goals. The 46 assists, he's a great playmaker. I think you can definitely expect that out of Slafkovsky. I think him getting just under 80 points is very fair. I think you could maybe get 75, maybe around there. So yeah, I think Slafkovsky, he's just a beast. He's a big boy. He finally realized last season keep his head up. He's throwing the body. He's looking like he's got momentum going his way. I think this is a guy at 20 years old. He could have a big breakout year like this. And now 4th on the team. And this is where it kind of gets wide open. The top 3 are almost kind of solidified as, it's going to be the top line. But from here on out, you could predict 4 or 5 names, I think, to be 4th on the team in point scoring. And this one's going to be a bit controversial. This one's going to be very, not a hot take, but it's going to be very really, you think this guy? And I'll explain. 4th on the team, I think, is Patrik Laine. I think Patrik Laine is going to have a massive bounce back year. And now, with that being said, he's not getting above 70 points, in my opinion. I'd love if he did, obviously. I'd love that. But I think he will start the year off a little cold, but get hot as it goes along, because he hasn't played hockey in, 7-8 months, I think, since he went to the Players Assistance Program. Or he might have gotten hurt, then went to the Players Assistance Program. But either way, he hasn't played hockey in a while. And that's, I'll mention that with Dach as well when we get to him. But Laine, I think he played 75 games. I think he does get a little injury, a couple injuries here and there that keeps him out for a couple games. But I think he stays relatively healthy this year. He plays the 75 games. I think he's going to get 34 goals, 35 assists for 69 points. And no, that was not intentional. That's just how it ended up. I was like, 34, basically 35 and 35. Yeah, why not? I think he's going to have 34 goals because he's got a fantastic shot. If you told me, hey, Laine's going to get 40 with the Canadiens this year, I'd look at you and I'd say, I could see it. I think 34 just because, again, I think he starts the year off a little bit slow, but come December, he's hot and he's on his game. 35 assists, he's an underrated playmaker. He's a guy that does love to shoot. He does love to get the puck. So I think a lot of his assists probably are going to come on tips or maybe rebounds or shots that get deflected. or shots, and the rebound gets in or something. I think you're going to get a lot of that with Laine. So I could see him being fourth in the team in scoring. Could I see him putting up 75 points? Yeah, I could, especially with the guys that he's going to be playing with. I could see it, and especially he's probably going to be on the power play. He's going to do good with the Canadiens if he can stay healthy. And fifth, and this is probably going to be the biggest, wow, really, moment, and that is Lane Hutson. Yes, I think Hutson's going to come in, and he's going to blow the socks off of everybody. He played 2 games last year. He did have the 2 assists. So naturally, of course, he's only going to get 35 points. No, obviously not. I think he's going to play 81 games. I think he ends up missing one, probably just maybe maybe it's at the beginning of the year where it's hey, we want to give this guy a try, just... I don't know. I think there's going to be some way where just Hutson just misses one game. Maybe it's at the end of the year. They don't want him to get hurt if we're gearing up for playoffs, and they just scratch him. Maybe it's something like that. I think he's going to get 12 goals, so I'm not expecting, a 20-20 type of season out of him. 20 and 20, you know what I mean. I think the 12 goals, you get 46 assists for 58 points. I think that's actually extremely... that's very possible for Lane Hutson, especially if he is... like Cale Makar. And I know the immediate comparison is, here, you have him getting more points than Cale Makar in his rookie season. Cale Makar had 50 points in 58 games. I'm not expecting him to get 70 points over the full season like Makar was basically projected to get. 58 in a full season I think is extremely good, especially for a rookie. He's probably going to be a top 3 finalist for the Calder, I would think, along with probably Celebrini, and I don't know who else, but I think it's going to be Celebrini, Hutson, and then whoever's third. I was trying to think of a rookie, and for some reason my mind blanked. I was going to say Gavin McKenna, but then I was like, wait, no, he's only 16. So Lane Hutson, we're 12 minutes in. I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit. But Hutson, fantastic offensive guy, fantastic with his skates. He's got a great shot, fantastic hockey IQ. I honestly think this is probably the core for the next handful of years at the very least, the next decade plus if Laine wants to stick around. He's 26, saying the next decade puts him at 36, a little bit iffy, but that's why I say handful of years. But I think this could be the core going forward. That's a damn good core to build around. Next up, I think Kirby Dach comes in here. I think he plays 67 games. I think he does get hurt a little bit. But he does have a good year. 23 goals, 31 assists for 54 points. A lot of people are projecting him when he comes back to have a breakout year like he was expected to have last year, at least from what I'm seeing, what I've seen. But I think that is still a year away. I think the MCL and the ACL injuries really kind of hurt that, unfortunately. I think this year he'll play well. He's going to play good, but I do think he will get a couple... he will be kept out of the lineup occasionally, just kind of for, his own health. Maybe the knees are acting up. But I think that Dach does play again the 67 games. He plays very well when he's in those games. And I think next season he'll have a very healthy season, and he'll get that breakout year that we expected for him to potentially rival Suzuki as the 1 seed. Then again, Suzuki's going to be putting up probably 90 points. Dach probably around a 70-point guy, which is still not bad, but clearly there's a 1 and a B. There's a 1 and a 2 in Montreal. But yeah, love Dach. If he plays a full season, I'd love it, obviously, but I expect that he'll miss 13 games or 15 games in the year. So next up, and this guy is not here because I don't like him. He's here just because I think there's more offensive to go around. Mike Matheson, I think he's still going to have a very good season, I will say. Last year, of course, a career year, 65-something points. I think he's going to play all 82 games. He's going to have 11 goals, 43 assists for 54 points. So still a good season, but I think he's going to get less offensive from last year because he was kind of the only real offensive defenseman on the team, and he was trying to pass to, everybody, anybody, and everybody, basically. That wasn't the top line because what can you make out of that? The rest of the lines at that point once Dach and Newhook got injured, basically. But this year, there's Lane Hutson. I think Guhle's going to have a decent offensive year. Potentially could have Logan Mailloux being there. So there could be potentially 4 really good offensive defensemen in Montreal. So I think Matheson's points totals will suffer a little bit, but it's not necessarily, again, because he had a career year and his points just go down. No, like I said, there's more offense to go around, so I don't think he's going to have as good a year. But clearly, I think he's still going to have a good year. 54 points for any defenseman, I think you could say is quite solid. I think that's what Philip Hronek got last year. So, Matheson, I think he's going to be good. And rounding out the top row is Jay Baruchel. Nope, sorry, that's Alex Newhook. I've thought that for so long, and I want to say it in a video, and I'm glad I finally got the opportunity to. Newhook, I think he's going to play 78 games this year. He's going to get 17 goals, 30 assists for 47 points. Shows that upside to potentially be a second-line guy, but I think he does. If Dvorak is traded, ends up as the third-line center, but I do think he could. He is probably glued on that Newhook, Dach, and Laine line. That Laine line, that's fun. That Laine line. That triple L right there. But yeah, I do think Newhook is definitely the guy who's probably going to focus way more defensively on that lineup. Laine is that clear, pure offense. Dach's a little bit more two-way. Newhook's very defensive, but does get some points here and there. I really liked him and Dach and Slafkovsky obviously together, but Slaf's on that top line. They're not going to move him probably unless Laine is absolutely hot and Slaf ends up starting the year cold, but I don't see that happening. I don't see either guy really starting the season cold, but I do think Laine will start the season cold. I just don't want him to, obviously. Newhook, I think with a near 50-point year, that's going to show upside, especially if he is on the second line all year. If Dvorak doesn't get traded and he ends up on the third line, I think it's probably closer to a 35, maybe 40-point season. But Newhook, near 50, I could see that being a very good season for him. And next up, starting the second row of Montreal Canadiens players, I think you're going to have Kaiden Guhle. I know, a little bit weird to have a guy whose career high is, I think, 20 points. I think he's near 20, 25. But I think Guhle's going to have a good year. He's going to be paired with Mike Matheson, of course, on that top pair more than likely, I would think. Guhle is going to have to handle a lot of the defensive responsibilities for Matheson, and I'd say the top six, but... Sorry, I'd say the top six, but not really. All those guys, except for, from what I've seen, Laine, I haven't really watched much of him in Columbus, but most of the guys on the top six can kind of handle their own defensively. So Guhle really just going to have to, keep up for Matheson defensively. But I think he's going to get some good points. I think he's going to play 78 games as well, like Newhook. And again, some of these games might just be at the end of the year. Your reward for playing well, you get to rest the last couple games. These guys get in the lineup instead, for example, It could be that. It could be maybe they miss a game or two to injury or whatever, but we're not going to have a ton of people being fully healthy, so yeah. Guhle, like I said, the 78 games, I think 10 goals, 26 assists, 36 points. I think Guhle can have a very solid scoring year. He's got a Weber-esque shot. A lot of Canadian fans have said that. I think this is the year it's gonna end up showing, especially if you have guys like Laine, like Slafkovsky, who can go in front of the net. If Gallagher goes back to playing that hockey, which probably shouldn't, considering he had a very good second half last year when he wasn't playing Gallagher hockey. I think Guhle's going to have a decent offensive season, 36 points. I think he could cap out as a 50-point guy, which, again, not bad whatsoever, especially if he's on the second pairing for most of his career. I think Guhle has potential, and I think he could start reaching it here. And especially with him being paired with Matheson again, I think the offense might come naturally to him at that point. Next up, Brendan Gallagher. We're getting into the third line type of guys. I think he's going to play 81 games this year. He had an extremely healthy season last year, aside from the 5-game suspension. So I think we might be turning a new leaf with Brendan Gallagher. Might be getting him fully healthy. And you know what? Even for $6.5 million, I think we're going to have an okay season for Gallagher. 81 games, I see 14 goals, 21 assists, 35 points. I think he's going to have a respectable year. Obviously at that $6.5 million cap hit, you're not going to get 60, 70 points out of Gallagher anymore. That's not going to happen. I do think, like I said, though, I think that 35 points is very, very safe to assume for Brendan Gallagher, especially if Joshua, for example, does make it out of camp and Pizzetta's a healthy scratch, like a lot of people on the last video have commented. Which, thank you guys for the comments on that video, by the way. I really appreciate that. I read every single one of them. I like and heart them when I remember to. So, yeah. I think Gallagher, especially if he is paired with a Wall, for example, if Dvorak gets traded and it is either Newhook or Evans on the third pair, especially, he has that potential to hit 35, maybe 40 points. But Gallagher, I could see him being like last year, where he starts off slow and the second half is very hot for him. I could see that happening again. But yeah, I think Gallagher's going to have a good year this year. And next up, I know it's weird to say this guy's going to have a good year when he's on the fourth line, but you know what? Screw it. Josh Anderson. Josh Anderson, I think he's going to have a slight rebound from last year. Now, the 35 points for Gallagher, those are going to go down for Anderson. Obviously, I think he's going to play 74 games. Now, whether that's between him and another team or that's just with the Canadiens and he misses a couple games, I think he's going to play 74 games. He's going to get 16 goals, 10 assists, 26 points. If he does have a rebound from last season, I think it is safe to assume he could hit that 16 goals now. Of course, there's that potential, like I mentioned in Lions predictions, where they swap Armia and Anderson. They have Anderson and Gallagher on the same line, and Armia has that chemistry with Evans, so you pair them together. I could definitely see that being the case. And if that happens, I definitely think there's potential there for Anderson to have that big rebound season. Anderson's a guy who could put 20 goals up. I think he ends up with the 16. I think he has a fairly good offensive year. Could be a good bottom six staple. Of course, you don't want him at 5.5. You probably want him more so at maybe $2 million. Slight overpay at 2.5 maybe. But I think, at third, fourth line minutes for $2 million, I think that's fairly good, actually. Especially now considering how many fourth line grinders just got like $1.5 million from their teams. And Anderson's like a power forward. Well, he is a power forward. He's big. He's a big boy. So yeah, Anderson, hopefully he has a rebound with the 16 goals. Of course, I'd love for him to come out, score 30 goals, 60 points. We can trade him. But I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. So, 16 goals, decent bounce back. He does show that he can still score 20 goals. And hopefully he could get there eventually. Next up is a guy that's kind of very predictable. And that's not in a bad way. That's a very good way. It is David Savard. David Savard. Now, I only have him playing 66 games. He's kind of done that, played 60 games. He's kind of missed a little bit of time with injury the last couple years. I think he ends up with 5 goals, 20 assists, 25 points. And, of course, this is a guy, he's going to be paired with Lane Hutson. He's going to be handling a lot of the defensive responsibility. Not that Lane Hutson's bad defensively, but just, you have Savard there, so go play with the big boys for Hutson. But Savard, I think, is obviously going to get his fair share of points. He's going to get 5 goals, 25 points. I think it's very respectable for a defensive defenseman like David Savard. I'm a big Savard fan. I love his defensive game, especially after that first year in Montreal where we all kind of didn't like him and shit on him. I think last year was really, really good for Savard. I thought he played very well. So Savard, expecting a nice season out of him. Kind of your average Savard. He kind of ends up around that 20, 25 point range most of the time anyways. So I could see a decent season for him. Next up, Yoel Armia. Yoel Armia, the guy that had a very respectable year last season. Yeah, he had a very respectable year last year, and I just realized I made an error in my notes real quick. I'm just going to correct that. Yeah, Yoel Armia had a very good year last year. Nobody expected that he'd come up and put up, I think it was 14-something goals, 15 goals. Played very well for stretches during the season after getting sent down to Laval. Got connected with a personal trainer. Not personal trainer, with an athletics trainer, all that. And, yeah, he, I think, plays 78 games this year. 14 goals, 10 assists for 24 points. I think Yoel Armia is going to have a nice season on the third, fourth line. Especially if he is on the fourth line, I could see that lowering to maybe 10 and 7, maybe a 14-point type year. But I think Armia is going to have a solid offensive year. Of course, he's one of those two-way guys. He plays a lot on the penalty kill. He's one of our prime penalty killers right now. So I think that could potentially lead to less offensive chances for him overall. Armia seems like a guy, he usually scores 1 or 2 shorthanded goals a year anyways, so offense not super lacking, but it's just going to more so be okay, he's focused on defensive ability a lot of the time. That's why he's not getting points. So, Armia, I think a 20-25 point season, very expected out of him. Jake Evans comes up next. Jake Evans, he's a guy, I think he's going to play 79 games this year. He's a guy who usually plays 65, 70 games. I think he's going to play a little more than usual. I think he's going to get 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points. Evans is another one of our prime penalty killers. He's a guy who you kind of pencil in for that. He's a guy you can kind of pencil in for that fourth line center spot. You can pencil him in for first, second line penalty kill minutes. He's a guy you can slot in on the third line if he needs to. He's not going to harm your team whatsoever. Very good defensively. I like Jake Evans a lot. For me, Evans is a guy that I think 20 points is very doable. He usually puts up 15, 20 points. I know he had that one year a couple years ago where he put up like 10, 12 goals, something like that. I think he's going to half that here, mostly just because, again, like Armia, going to be spending a lot of time in the penalty kill, playing defensive minutes. Wouldn't surprise me if he only ends up with 6, but I think he could put up 12 again if he gets the third line center spot. I like Evans. He's a good guy. Wouldn't mind giving him a try on the third line, but Evans, good guy. I like him. And next up, a guy that if he does make the camp out of the lineup, I think a lot of people are going to be expecting him to be maybe around Savard, Anderson, maybe just below Gallagher. I think some people are expecting him to be here. However, with Logan Mailloux, I do think that he's going to only get into 62 games. I explained it in the lines predictions. I think him and Struble are going to end up splitting time. Mayu does get the bulk of the games, but Struble is still going to get into a couple games. Mayu, I think he gets into 62 games with 4 goals, 16 assists, 20 points. Now, Mayu, yes, he's an offensive defenseman. He's only 21. Now, yes, I know Laine's around the same age, but Laine's on another level compared to Logan Mailloux. And that's not to insult Logan Mailloux. He's still going to be a very, very good third-pairing defenseman who should be in the top 4 when the team is all really, in its prime. Unless they put him on the second pairing. But I believe that Mailloux is going to be paired with Xhekaj for the foreseeable future because they had very good chemistry down in Laval when Xhekaj got sent down last year. Mailloux, I think, with 20 points, especially if he is on that third pair, is very, very good. I think it's very respectable that Mailloux hits 20 points, especially as a rookie coming in. I think the 4 goals, most offensive defensemen when they come into the league do struggle a little bit with the goal scoring. But with guys like Slafkovsky, Suzuki, Coffield, Laine on this team, how are you not going to at least get a good handful of points? Like, Mailloux should put up 20 points. I could see 25, maybe 30, especially if he has a hot streak and gets bumped to that second pairing, or gets promoted to that second line. I could see that happening a little bit, but of course, we'll see what happens. And rounding out the second row is the third line center who should have been traded in the offseason, Christian Dvorak, of course. I don't hate Dvorak. He just hasn't really taken that next step into being a second line center like we wanted to when we traded for him. He's a perennial third line center at this stage. Very respectable, good defensively. You can shoot him in for, penalty killing minutes. Third, fourth line type of guy. Closer to a third line center than he is a fourth line center. I do think, like Mailloux, actually, funny enough, I had the same amount of games. I think Dvorak gets into 62 games. I think he's going to get 8 goals, 10 assists for 18 points. Dvorak, again, since coming to Montreal, not a guy who puts up a lot of points. I could see him getting more if he's with Gallagher and Anderson. They have the seasons that they have. I could potentially see that. However, Dvorak, not a guy who puts up a ton of points. Last year, he kind of struggled. I think he had 9 points in 30-something games. He did suffer from an injury a lot of the year, so I'll cut him some slack. However, he does usually put up 20, 25 points. I think he ends up having less. Now, of course, whether these 62 games are throughout the whole year with Montreal or they're up to the deadline if we end up trading him, I'll let you decide. But I do think that Dvorak probably does get traded at the deadline, especially if we are out of the playoffs by the deadline, which I'm hoping not. I'm hoping it's more so we're in that wild card race, but just making a couple moves just to, promote Evans, really, get Barry Boulay in the lineup more than likely. But yeah, again, I'll let you decide. Next up is the guy that I think everybody as a Canadiens fan is extremely excited to see what he does, coming back from both shoulders, hopefully being fully healed, and that is, of course, Arber Xhekaj, the sheriff in town. I think he's going to get into 71 games this year. 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. And, of course, 145 penalty minutes. Xhekaj is going to have a mean streak. I think he's going to get 10 fights this year. Could maybe pencil him in for 15. It's just that, he's probably going to fight Matt Rempe this season. You got to see Rempe get humbled by one of the best enforcers in the league. Probably fights Delorier when we play Philly. I don't really know who else Xhekaj fights. If Ryan Reeves wants to stop being a little pussy, maybe they get round 2. Maybe Xhekaj embarrasses Reeves again. I think Xhekaj's going to have a good season. I think, again, the 7 goals might be a little high. He might be more of a 4 or 5 type of goal scorer. However, Xhekaj, he's a guy, he can literally shoot the puck through the net. He's got a really good shot. I think a lot of his chances might end up getting tipped, which is why he gets the 10 assists. But you know what? I think Xhekaj's going to have a good year. Obviously maybe to say he gets the same amount of points as a guy like Christian Dvorak might be a little out there, but you know what? I like Xhekaj. He's a third pairing guy. Let me have my dreams. And speaking of third line defensive guys, this guy's actually a fourth line grinder, more of an enforcer, I guess you can maybe say. I'd consider him a grinder. Pizza Man, Michael Pezzetta. I think he's going to get into 65 games. He might end up getting scratched here and there for guys like Joshua Waugh, who we'll get into in a minute. But I think in the 65 games, he gets 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. That's around the standard Pezzetta. He I think, had 15 points last year, playing most of the year. He's about that, a 5-goal, 12-point guy, very much a depth player. And I think he ends up with 77 penalty minutes. I think Pizzetta's going to be another guy as well who really fights a lot this season. Maybe 5, I don't think he can quite get to Jack Eye's level, but I think he's going to get 5-7 fights in there. Pizzetta's a guy who, really, really big fan of him, especially after last year. He had a very, very respectable season on the fourth line. Did not hurt us nearly as much as I thought he had the previous year. I don't know what training he did last year to get better, but hopefully he keeps it up and he stays on the fourth line for another year before Florian eventually bumps him out. Next up is going to be a guy that I know a lot of people are expecting him to get into the roster full-time. I said in the Lions predictions, I could see him jumping into the lineup. However, I do think that he just gets into games based off injury and he's a call-up. And that guy is Joshua Waugh. Joshua Waugh, I think, gets into 15 games this year. Impresses, though. 5 goals, 3 assists for 8 points. Now I know, about half point per game. That's on pace for 40 points. Oh, well, Harry, why wouldn't he make the lineup? Because I think those are more towards the end of the season, and he probably would have. Now, of course, am I saying this and he can impress the team right out of camp and make it? Yeah, absolutely. There's always that possibility. But I do think that Canadiens management sees it as more of a, hey, he would benefit more from going down to the AHL, playing first-line minutes down there, and then coming up into the Canadiens' third line. I could see that being the case. Do I think that it's possible they maybe go with Waugh on the second line and then go Newhook on the third line, left wing with Dvorak and Anderson or Gallagher or whatever? Yeah, maybe. Could even be on the third line and they just bump down, I forget who I had there, bump down Anderson or Gallagher or Armia, for example? Yeah, that's also possible. But I do think management sees it as they don't want to rush him. They see it as, again, play a year in the AHL, we'll call you up if we need you, and I think he impresses, and next season he'll make the roster full-time for sure. But yeah, Waugh, I think he's going to have a very respectable amount of call-ups when he gets here. We're already 30 minutes in. I got to try hurrying this up a little bit. My apologies. Next up is a guy that is going to be splitting time at Logan Mailloux, and that is Jaden Struble. Now, Strubes, I think, is a guy who I like him. I think he's very good. Does he get his ice time cut because of a guy like Logan Mailloux who's big? He's like Struble, who's got a bit of a mean edge to him. Possibly. I think Struble will end up fighting hard for his spot, especially with Mailloux, them probably going back and forth. But I think he gets into 24 games. He has 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. He's not an offensive guy. He's more of a defensive type of guy, more of that kind of Alexei Emelin kind of vibe to him. Very big hitter, very defensive type of guy. And Struble, I think, ends up with 32 penalty minutes. I think he's going to be a very, very hard-hitting type of guy. And now, could I see him coming in if, say, Jack Guy gets hurt for a couple games or Savard? Yeah, definitely. I think he will get games. However, I do also think that, unfortunately, Justin Barron is going to get games. And I say unfortunately because I'm not like one of the very, very hard Barron haters. I just think he needs to improve his defense. I actually like him offensively. I think he's all right. In 12 games, Justin Barron, I think, is going to get 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points. Going to be one of those weird guys who just, for some reason, scores pretty decently on a call-up level. Barron, I say this as well because throughout the year last year, half the year in Montreal, he put up 7 goals. Then half the year with Laval, he had, I think, only 1 or 3, something like that. So, weird. He's a guy who seems to score better at the NHL than he does at the AHL, but yeah, Justin Barron, I think, is a guy who does get into a handful of games. He's going to probably have to if he's not traded, which still could be, of course. There's always time left for the season. It's still probably way too early. We're still a month out from the season, but, I mean, hey, you know what? Why not? Justin Barron gets games. Next up, the last 2 forwards are guys that I personally like, and I think they'll get a couple games. Alex Barré-Boulet. Now, I'm on the assumption that Dvorak doesn't get traded because I think we're going to be good. But if he is, Barré-Boulet is going to play more. I see him getting into 3 games with an assist. Barré-Boulet, he's the guy, he can come in on your fourth line. He is not going to hurt you whatsoever. He's a very respectable fourth line guy. I'm a fan of his. I hope he gets into a couple games with the Canadiens. He's from Quebec. That'd be awesome too. But, yeah, Alex Barré-Boulet. And now, of course, I think the funniest one by far, Florian Jack-Eye. He signed his ELC last year. He played in a handful of games with the Rocket. This year, I think he gets into 2 games with 7 penalty minutes. I think he's going to get into a fight and have a minor. Maybe it's a high sticking or a slash, something like that. But yeah, Florian Jack, I think, does get a few games with the Canadiens, and yeah, I don't know. I would just love to see Florian and Arber on the same team together. We are going to get there eventually. He is going to take over for Pizzetta, I think, in two, maybe 3 years. But it can't come fast enough. So yeah, again, I'm not ranking Sean Farrell, David Reinbacher, but I think they will get games. I'll say that much. So yeah. Now, on to the goaltending, which is easily the weirdest shit to predict for the Canadiens, because if Monty's a legitimate starter, he's going to put up great numbers. If Primo ends up stealing the starter's job from Montembeault, he's going to put up great numbers. However, with Montembeault, I think he ends up playing 50 games out of the 82. I think he is going to be clearly the starter, but I think it's going to be more of a, not 1B necessarily, but a Monty gets rest because he's really good. Primo gets starts because he's also quite good. But I think Monty gets 50 games. I couldn't even begin to predict what the record ends up being. I do think he has a 2.65 goals against average and a 912 save percentage with 1 shutout. Monty weirdly had less shutouts than Primo last year, which is kind of funny. I think it was 0-2. Yeah, I know Primo had that like 13 save shutout against the Ducks. It was something like that. But Monty, I think, is gonna strike gold. He's gonna get 1 shutout this year. Yeah, Monty, obviously the goals against average could be better, but given that we're more of a fringe playoff team than a clear playoff team, I think that's actually very good numbers. And I think next year, if he's the starter and the team just gets better, I think that could end up being around a 2.4, 2.5. I think he could be a very respectable starter. And Primo, I should say, Caden Primo, who's of course going to be the backup, he's going to get into 32 games. Now, this is of course assuming that neither goalie gets pulled. If it does, it might end up being a 50-34 or a 52-30, something like that. It might end up being something like that. But yeah, I think Primo is going to get into 32 games. He's going to put up a 2.71 goals against average and a 906 save percentage. And of course, because he gets more shutouts than Monty, somehow he's going to get 3. How? I don't know. Maybe he plays games against the Ducks again. God, that game last year just... God, we outshot them, like 47-13? It was crazy. But yeah, Primo, I think he's going to have very respectable numbers for a backup, especially for a guy who's really making his stride as a full-time backup for the first season. Now, of course, given what he did last year, could I expect him to put up similar numbers to Montembeault? Yeah, potentially, actually. I think he had a very good, I think it was April and February, or April and March. It might have been, it was late in the season. He had very, very good numbers. So I could definitely see Primo having similar numbers to Montembeault. I think that they are going to be in a fight all year for the starter's job, so they could actually end up being better than this, I think. Trying to push each other, hey, I'm better, no, I'm better, no, I'm better, I'm better. But yeah, I think we're going to have that kind of struggle, not struggle, but that friendly competition all year round to see who really is better. And yeah, so that's my general Canadiens ranking. Or not ranking, but the point predictions. I guess you could say it's a ranking because it's really who I think is going to be the best Hab this year to the, not worst, but to basically who gets less ice time. Yeah, so these are the points predictions for the Montreal Canadiens this year for me. Not really much else to say aside from the outro. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Harry Rice. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, favorite, share on everything, which includes, but it's not limited to, YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, Tumblr, and all that good stuff. Check out the links in the description. Please and thank you. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you guys again so much for watching. My name is Harry Rice, and I am out. I am Montreal. Always remember, no matter how bad it was last year, hopefully how good it will be like this year. Go Habs, go, baby. Thank you guys again so much for watching. My name is Harry Rice again, and I am out. Love you guys. See you guys. Bye, guys. Love you guys. See you guys. Bye, guys. Love you guys. See you guys. Bye, guys. Bye.